This is Gemara Kesubos Daf Vav. We picked up yesterday in the bottom of Hamid Beis. We went to the end of the Amud just to bring ourselves back into things. And in front of you, you see the Gemara Kesubos Daf Hamid Beis. We're in the middle of discussing a question, and this is going to be the fundamental idea of the entire Daf today: whether one is allowed to have the Bia Rishon, the first act of intercourse, on Shabbos. And the Gemara said, "What's the question?" The question is that first act of Bia that could cause one to bleed, and therefore we have to go into the science, into the practicalities of things. Where is the dam? The dam sulim that is inside a woman. What is that dam? Or I should say better, how is that dam enclosed inside the woman? And as you see in front of you, about 15 lines to the bottom of yesterday's Daf and Ham and Beis, we had two options. Is the dam mifkad pakid or chabure michbar? And we learned yesterday, this is so important, Rashi learned that mifkad pakin meant it's sitting there almost like a balloon, we could call it. That you just pop the balloon and the blood comes out, and it's not in the walls of the uterus, it's not in the rechem, it's not in the walls, therefore it's not making a wound when you remove it. Or is it chabure michbar and it is absorbed into the wall? And there are two different lashaynes that we're in the middle of discussing. The first lashon we said is that if you tell me it's mifkad pakid, that it's sitting there, it's like that balloon, do you say you need the dam and it's permissible because you're not making a Pesach? Or do you say that you're creating a Pesach and it's a problem? And then we went into, we pass like Rav Shimon, which it's mutter, Rav Yehuda, which is aser, or perhaps we see there's the rule of mikalkel that you're ruining and you don't intend to build, and therefore it's still another reason to be mutter. On the second side, we said the Ika Amri 8 lines to the bottom, and we said even if you're going to tell me, that the blood is absorbed. If the blood is absorbed, seemingly you're making chabura, you're going into the uterus and you're pulling out that blood from the walls. So the question is, is your intent, are you doing it for the blood and forbidden, or no, you're just doing it for an act of anah, an act of pleasure, and therefore it's mutter. But the question is, says the Gemara, 1 second, even if you're doing it for pleasure, but the dam is memela, it comes automatically. So when something goes automatically, do we pass like Rav Yehuda and it's also Rav Shimon that it's mutter? Or maybe you'll tell me it's an act of kilkul, it's an act of destruction, and therefore it'll be permissible. And with that idea, we turn over to Vavam and Aleph, where we conclude those words of that question, Oyalacha Kirav Shimon. And Rav Shimon says that you're chayiv even in the act of kilkul when it was intentional. Says the Gemara, and now we answer the question. Itmar bebi Rav, Amri Rav, Shari, Shmuel Aser. So now we have a machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Rav says it's mutter, Shmuel says it's aser. That is one way of saying over the machlekes. And of course, because Gemara was orally transmitted, there were times that they forgot things, and therefore the Gemara says, bin harda, in harda, Amri Rav Asar Shmuel Shari, and Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak V'Simanich. How do you remember? We have two different machlekesim. Narda says one way, in the yeshiva of Rav they said another way, and says Gemara, no, you remember it. Elu Mekil Natzmai, Elu Mekil Natzmai. And each yeshiva they said over that their Rebbe was Mekel. So in Bei Rav in the top line they said Rav was the one that was lenient with Shari. In Narda, which is the yeshiva of Shmuel, they said that Shmuel was one that mutter was Mekel. Ask the Gemara of Rav Shari, is Rav indeed lenient? And from now we're going to go in a lengthy discussion figuring out, is there an opinion that holds that one who has this act of bia, this first act of intercourse on Shabbos, it is indeed permissible? As you see in Rashi, 3 lines into the narrow lines, Rashi says, what comes out, the davar she'enei miskavin, you're not having kavana for this blood, therefore it is mutter. And seemingly the Gemara is asking, is that really Rav's opinion? V'amar Rav Simi Bar Chizkiya Mishmei de Rav, 5 lines into Vavam and Aleph. Hi Misachraya din Ezaisa. Ask the Gemara. We have a mesachrayit in his eyes, so we have a spigot that's stuck into a barrel. We have a barrel of beer, a barrel of wine, and you take the spigot and you stick it in to the wall of the barrel, and that's you're going to take out the wine, you can take out the beer. So the question is, you let it take this spigot and you let it stick it into the barrel on Shabbos. Says the Brisa, Aser lahaduka b'yom hatava. You're not allowed to put the spigot in on Yontif. So ask the Gemara, 1 second. When you do this, are you intending to squeeze out? What are you squeezing? So Rashi says over here, very important. Rashi points out 5 lines into the narrow lines. That when they would take this spigot, they didn't have some fancy science. They would take a spigot and they would stick it into the barrel. What's the problem? Now you have all this area around the spigot that's going to leak out. So what did you do? You took you took a worn out begadim and you wrapped up the spigot with it, and then you took it and you stuck it in. But what's the problem? As you stick it in, what's going to happen? These towels are going to get absorbed with liquid of the beer or the wine, and it's going to squeeze it, and there's some drops that are going to fall out. So says the Gemara, that's a davar she'enei miskavin. You're not intending for squeezing out the the towels, the worn out begadim that are around the spigot, putting into the beer barrel, and yet it says it's aser. So how could you tell me that Rav says a davar sheina miskavin is mutter, but over here this is mishmei de Rav as well, and it says it's aser? Answers the Gemara fundamentals. Everyone's wondering. Oh, in that case, afilu Rav Shimon moide. Even Rav Shimon admits. I mean, even though Rav Shimon normally holds davar sheina miskavin is mutter, aser, mutter. One more time, even though Rav Shimon normally says davar sheina miskavin is mutter, over there Rav Shimon agrees it's aser. Why? Ta'abaya ve'rava d'amitabaya moider Rav Shimon b'psik reisha v'lo yamos. Normally Rav Shimon says a psik reisha, you cut off the chicken's head, you're not intending for the chicken to die. Shimon says that's mutter. You drag the charitz, you drag the bench and you make a charitz, you make a furrow in the ground. Reminiscent of a Gemara in Shabbos, Rav Shimon says you're not intending to make that furrow, it's mutter, it's not an act of plowing, but it's a psik reisha. If it's inedible, if it's automatically going to happen. If it's intrinsic, you do act A and act B automatically happens. When I take my spigot, again, that's covered with the towels, and I stick it in, automatically 100% of psik reisha. It's going to do an act of squeezing, an act of schita. It is a daraisa. Even Rav Shimon agrees that is going to be forbidden. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Rav Chiya bar Ashi says, the halacha is like Rav Yehuda, which is that it's aser. Rav Chanan bar Ami Amar Shmuel halacha Rav Shimon. They paskin like Rav Shimon that it's mutter. Rav Chiya bar Avin Masni B'loi Gavri. They said without quoting other people. What do they say? Rav Amar halacha Rav Yehuda that it's aser. Shmuel halacha Rav Shimon that it's mutter. So says the Gemara, we see explicitly that Rav does not go with Shimon. We see explicitly that Rav says it's aser. So how can we say in the top line that Bebe Rav the Yeshiva of Rav? They said that Rav was the opinion that says it's mutter livol b'tchila b'Shabbos. It's mutter to have the first act of intercourse, even though it's going to cause blood. But because the davar sheina miskavin, you're not intending it, is going to be mutter. But we see clearly that we're saying that Rav does not hold that. Rav paskins like Rav Yehuda, which is that it's also davar sheina miskavin. Answers the Gemara, La'ilam Rav Yehuda sfirle. You're right. Rav holds like Rav Yehuda, but now we got to go back at yesterday's discussion. Remember that tree we went down? We have mifka palkid, we have chabure michbar. We have two opinions. Is the dam like a balloon that you're popping and it comes out, or is the dam into the wall of the rechem? So within each opinion, there were different ways of explaining. Says the Gemara, let's go into it. Lahach lishna, according to the first lashon, damar dam mifka palkid. According to the first lashon that says that the blood is like that balloon, you're just popping it. It's not absorbed into the walls of the rechem of the uterus. Rav holds like Rav Yehuda. He holds like Rav Yehuda, the davar sheina miskavin, an unintentional act is forbidden. So why here does he allow them to have the first act of intercourse? You know why? Because it's an act of kilkel. It's an act of destruction. It's true that it's inevitable. It's inevitable that you're going to create the Pesach. You're going to create the opening. But it's an act of kilkel, an act of destruction. You're not intending to do that. And therefore it's mutter. And lahach lishna, the second lashon chaburi michbar, that says that the blood is really absorbed into the walls of the rechem. Still, makalko b'chaburuhu, it's an act of destruction when you make the wound, and therefore, according to both tzaddim, even if Rav says like Rav Yehuda that in general davar sheina miskavin is going to be forbidden, over here there's two reasons to say it's mutter, because it's mekalkel, it's destruction with regard to the act of creating the Pesach, creating the opening, the act of bainah, or because it's destruction with regard to creating chabura. Two different reasons why even if you hold like Rav Yehuda, it still can be mutter according to Rav in this case. And now we flip into the opinion of Shmuel. What did Shmuel say? Shmuel said it's aser to have the first act of Bia on Shabbos. Ask the Gemara, Maser Rav Chisda, 5 lines to the bottom. Tinoikish le'gizman halerois. We have a tinoikish, we have a little girl. It did not reach her time to see blood yet. She's not of age, she's not mature. She did not start seeing her period. Vinises, and of course this goes back to nostalgic time that they got married very young. And she gets married. Beishamai Imrim says Beishamai. Noisla arba leilos. She's allowed to sleep, be with her husband for 4 nights, even though there might be blood during the intercourse. So why are they allowed to be together? You know why? Because that's dam besulim. That is the hymenal blood, and that is the blood that does not make her aser, says Beishamai. So because she's a girl that's not at the age of maturity, and we're going to see there's really 3 levels that the Mishnah there discusses. The Mishnah Anida. We have a girl that's young, that's not mature yet, didn't see her period. And then we have a girl that's a naira, that's of age to see her period, but didn't see her period. And then we have the top category, which of course is our women that get married nowadays, is a woman that not only is of age to see her period, and therefore sees her period. And that category, which we're not going to discuss in our Gemara, that's why we're just going to point this out, just to realize where we're holding, that category, the rule is you only can have one act of Bia the first night, one act of incomplete Bia Gemura, full act of intercourse, and then everything is also, because we're always concerned that if there's one dot of blood, maybe that's Dam Nida, and therefore they are usher. But now we're going, a little girl who never seen Dam yet, says Beishameh, she has 4 nights, any blood that comes out, we assume is Dam Besulim. Beis Hillel Imrim, no, 3 lines from the bottom says Beis Hillel, you're allowed to continuously, even more than 4 nights, they're allowed to sleep together until the wound heals. And as Rashi, 3 lines from the bottom, points out, as long as there wasn't an act of Bia, an act of Tashmish without blood, we can assume that it's all the original Dam Besulim, which is Amakah, says Beis Hillel, and therefore they continuously could be together. Higiyazman Leroy, this is category number 2. If a girl reaches her time of seeing, she reaches maturity, but she did not see blood yet, says Rashi, very important, 2 lines to the bottom. She does not see Dam yet, meaning she's of age, she might be 12, 13, 14, but she did not actually have her period yet. Of course, every girl is different. Then there's new dinim, Vinisis, and she gets married. Now you get 1 full night, says Rashi, and as the bottom Rashi says Beishamai, and the bottom Rashi points out, even they could be together many times. Beis Hillel ad Motzai Shabbos. Says Beis Hillel, you don't get until the Makkah heals, but you get until Motzai Shabbos. And of course, if you got married, like the first Mishnah taught us on Wednesday night, says Beis Hillel, Arba Leilos. So you have Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Motzai Shabbos, 4 nights. Says the Gemara as we turn over to Vav Amid Beis, my lav. So what did Beis Hillel mean over here? My lav de'iloi ba'il matzi ba'il. Beis Hillel meant if you're not together on Wednesday night or each night, you have up until 4 nights to be together. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Matzei Shabbos. Afilu b'Shabbos. So what do we see clearly? And as Rashi speaks out in the third line, what do we see? We see it's mutter to sleep together the first time on Shabbos. So there might be blood. We see it's mutter. So ask the Gemara on Shmuel, you said it's Aser. Ask the Gemara, what are you talking about? We see clearly it's mutter. Amar Rav on the second line, he answers, Loi lebar mi Shabbos. It means you get 4 nights excluding Shabbos. Amar Abaya, 1 second. It said you have until Motzei Shabbos 4 nights. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Motzei Shabbos. El Amar Rava, second daret. Kishabal. The Brisa is referring to that you were together. You were together and you have 4 nights. Says the Gemara, Ikishabal. If you slept together once, so what's the chiddush of Beis Hillel to tell you 4 nights? My kamashmalon, what's the chiddush? Kamashmalon, the shari lemivel b'Shabbos kiddush Shmuel, a different chiddush. You already slept together on Wednesday night or a Thursday night. Then therefore the dam bisulim, the dam, whether it's michbar chavir, whether it's inside the walls of the rechem, whether it's mifkad pocket, whether it's that balloon, you already got rid of the real dam bisulim. So what's the chiddush? You allowed to be together on a Friday night like Shmuel. What's Shmuel? Ta'amar Shmuel. 5 lines down. If there's a narrow opening, you're still allowed to go in there on Shabbos. Even though you might knock off some pebbles from the walls, it's still allowed. So the chiddush over here is, even though you're right, you got rid of the original quantity of dam. The dam bisulim was removed from the rechem, but there might still be a little bit left in the walls. So says Beis Hillel that you're still allowed to remove. That's a chiddush. You have Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Motzei Shabbos. Even though you might be removing a little bit, that is still allowed. So we try to ask a kasha on Shmuel, and the Gemara resolves. Says the Gemara, Masiv Rav Yosef, 7 lines down, Vavam and Beis, another kasha on Shmuel. Chasan pater mi Kriyishma Laila Rishon. The Chasan is pater from Kriyishma on the first night. Ad Motzai Shabbos, until Motzai Shabbos. Before we begin, we just have to point out many mistakes have been made. Halach lamaisa bisman hazeh. The Mishnah Berurah says it's not true, and we're chayiv in Kriyishma because since we do not have kavana, unfortunately, anyways, therefore we say you have to read Kriyishma and Laila Rishayna. A bit of a misconception. Many people have learned this Gemara and think that they're pater from davening, pater from Kriyishma on the first night. It is not true. There is a chayiv. But either way, back into the Gemara. Says the Gemara, a chasen bisman a Gemara where they had kavana, of course, is pater from saying Kriyishma on the first night of his wedding until Motzai Shabbos. If he did not do the act on night number 1, night number 2, night number 3, is 4 nights, and each night he's going to be pater from Kriya Shema. Why? Why is he pater? Says the Gemara, my lav ditarid. He's tired, he's preoccupied. His mind is on one thing. He's trying to complete the mitzvah. He's trying to have intercourse with his wife. And that is the reason why he's patur from Kriyishma. He cannot focus right now on Malchus and the Shem Hashem and Shema Yisrael because he's thinking about finishing the mitzvah in front of him. And therefore he's patur. So what do we see? We see that you're allowed to have a tashmish on the Shabbos. Because he said 4 nights, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. Amarle Abaya no raya. Loy detare deloy boil. You know what's going on over here? It's not that he's allowed to be together with his wife on the first night on Shabbos. No, he's preoccupied that he did not have tashmish yet. And that's the reason why. But never does it say that you're allowed to be together on Shabbos. Amrle Rava, 1 second. You just told me what's his tarid? Tarid deloy ba'il. And as Rashi, about 10 lines into a narrow line, says, mitztayer shaloi ba'il. He's in tsar that he did not have the first act of intercourse, the first act of tashmish, and that is the reason why he's patur from Kriyishma. And it's not a raya to our discussion that they're actually allowed to be together on the Shabbos. No, because they never said you could actually be together on Shabbos. Just Friday night, you're going to be patur from Kriyishma. Why are you going to be patur from Kriyishma? Because you're tarid, because you're bitzar. Why are you bitzar? Why are you in pain? Because you did not fulfill the mitzvah yet. Amarle Rava, 1 second. Umisham tirda pater, says Rava. Someone who's in pain, he's pater from Kriyishma. Is that true? Says Rava. Ella me'ata, 10 lines down. First one line is Ella. Tavas vinasa bayam achanami tebater. Are you going to tell me if someone's boat sinks at sea, the boat, excuse me, the boat capsizes, he's in a lot of tsar, a lot of pain. You're going to tell me he's patur from Kriyishma? Maybe you'll say, yeah, can't be. An Aval, of course, an Aval is one that has the highest level of tsar. One of his close relatives was just nifter, just died, and yet he has to do all the mitzvahs, says Rav. So how can you tell me that the reason why the chassan is patur over here is because he's bitzar? It can't be. Now we just finished this brisa chutz min atfilin. There's one mitzvah the Avil does not have to do on the first day, of course, is he does not put on tefillin. Why? Shnemer ben pe'er. It says pe'er. It says by tefillin pe'er chachava shalecha paskin yecheskel. And in Avil, that first day is not to be pe'er. He's not big glory, and that's why he does not put on tefillin. But what do we see clearly? That it can't be that what the chassan is patur from Kriyishma is because he's bitzar for those 4 nights that he did not have an active intercourse. It's not true. Says, because why? Because tsar, pain is not a reason to pat you, to exempt you from a mitzvah. Elamarava tanoyi. So says the Gemara, where we have a kasha on Shmuel. Shmuel said it's aser livol b'tchila b'Shabbos. We have a brayse that seemingly say it's mutter because the chassan is patur for the first 4 nights. Seemingly it's because he's allowed to have intercourse that night, and therefore he's tarid. He's thinking about the action, and that's why he's patur from Kriyishma. Says the Gemara, Elamarava in defense for Shmuel tanoyi. It's a machlokes tanoyim. As we saw, the machlokes Rav and Shmuel is as well a machlokes tanoyim. Titani chado we learned in one Mishnah. We're about 20 lines from the bottom. Imloasa Maisa Bar Rishain, Pater Af B'Sheni. If they did not sleep together on the first night, they're pater on the second night. B'Sheni, Pater Af B'Shlishi. If they were not together on the second night, then they're pater from Kriyishma even on the third night. V'Tani Idoch, and there's a different price that says Rishon B'Sheni if they were not together on the first or second night. Wednesday night or Thursday night, pater, shlishi chayiv. But the third night, Friday night, they're chayiv. So of course, these 2 brises, one is Rav, one is Shmuel. One brisa says they're allowed to be together on Friday night, therefore they're pater from Kriyishma, the first brisa. The second brisa says they're not allowed to be together, and therefore they're chayiv in Kriyishma on the third night. Abaye says, no, I have a different way of learning those brises. Those brises are also discussing if they're preoccupied, and that's the reason why they're pater from Kriyishma. And the Gemara explains that according to Rava just taught us that these brises are indeed arguing whether there is an Isser, whether one is allowed to be together with a Basula the first time on a Shabbos. Vani Tanoi, Kani Tanoi. And those Tanoim are like these Tanoim. The Tani learned in the Brisa, HaKoine says that Basula L'Yivo B'Tchila B'Shabbos, V'Chachomim Matirim. The first opinion in the Brisa says you're not allowed to be together on Shabbos. And the Chachomim said it's allowed. Man Chachamim, Amar Rav Shimini, of course. Tamar Davashena Miskavein is mutter. So says the Gemara, we have a machlokes tanoim. We had 2 brises, whether you're pater from Kriyishma. Seemingly the reason is, are you allowed to be together with your wife, the Basula, the first time on a Friday night? Are we concerned for the tam? And similarly, we see over here Machlokes Tanakam and the Chacham and Rav Shimon that says you're allowed to. Why? Because Davar Shein Miskavin is motor. Amrle Abaye, and Abaye says no, it's not a Machlokes Tanayim. V'amoy Rav Shimon Sik Reisha, like we saw now at Aleph. How can you tell me that Rav Shimon says it's motor? He admits whenever it's a Sik Reisha, below Yamas that it's forbidden. Amarle, so they respond to Abaye, no, it's not a Sik Reisha. What do you mean it's not a Sik Reisha? You're being together with the Psula, with a virgin for the first time, so of course it's going to be dam. So how can you be together on a Friday night? They respond, it's not a Sik Reisha. Why not? Says the Gemara, we are not like those Babylonians who do not know how to do hataya. Hataya means a way of having tashmish, a way of penetrating at an angle which could circumvent the besulim. There are those that even on that first act of tashmish, even when it's with a besula, still there might not be dam. And that's why it's mutter according to Rav Shimon that Davar Shein Miskavin is mutter. Why? It's a psik reisha? No, it's not. It's not a psik reisha. How is it not a psik reisha? Because it's a concept of ataya, a concept that you could have an act of intercourse somehow on an angle that could circumvent the dam besulim, and that is the reason why it is mutter. But says the Gemara, 1 second, im kain tarid lama. If you're going to tell me that there's a way to have an act of intercourse without seeing dam, tarid lama. So what is the reason why? If you're tarid, you're pater from kriyishma. And over here, it's a bit of machlekes rishayim over here, exactly what this means. But we saw before that when you're preoccupied, that when you're tarid, then you're pater from kriyishma. What's the reason? Because the pashut shot is, he's tarid, he's preoccupied whether he's going to be able to break the dam besulim. But says the Gemara, 1 second, if this person is a baki, he's proficient with hatayo, with having this active intercourse on an angle, so what's his preoccupation? He knows what he's doing. Answers the Gemara, l'she'enai baki. The Bryce referred to one who is not a baki. He's the one that's put from kriyishma. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Yomru baki mutter l'she'enei baki aser. Are you going to tell me? So you know what they should say? They should say if you're a baki, it's mutter. If you're an ain't a baki, it's aser. The Bryce didn't say that. The Bryce said a rule across the board that you're put from kriyishma. Says the Gemara, you know why the Bryce said that? Because roiv b'kiyamim. Because most people are knowledgeable, and that's the reason why the Bryce said it's mutter livel b'tchila b'shabbos. We're going back to the Bryce that Abaye just quoted, the Bryce that the Gemara just quoted, the Hani Tanai, and the Gemara said that the Tanakam, the Chacham, held that it's mutter like Rav Shimon, Davar Shein Miskavin, and the reason why it's mutter is because you could do this act of ataya, you could do this act of tashmish, the act of penetration on an angle which circumvents the psulim, and roiv people are able to do that. Says the Gemara, 1 second. If you tell me that most people could do an act of tashmish b'hataya with on an angle, which means what? Which means on that first act of tashmish, will there be blood? No. Even if she's a besula, why will there not be blood? The reason there won't be blood is because they're circumventing the besulim. Elameyata, different, it makes no sense. Shishbinim lama, mapa lama. There used to be a concept that they put down a map, they put down a white sheet to catch the blood. If there was blood, there would be shishbinim. As well, there would be attendants that would sit there to make sure that they weren't lying. So says the Gemara, what's the necessity for that? If they're proficient and they have an act of intercourse by circumventing the dam besulim, what are we putting down a white sheet for? You know why? Because there's always that concern. It's true that roiv of them have tashmish this way, but still there's always that concern that there might be a little blood and they might lose it, and that's the reason for the mappa, and that's the reason for the shishbinim, and therefore we have a machlekes Abaye and Rava, whether there is a machlekes Tanoim with regard to Rav and Shmuel, whether the act of intercourse on the first night is mutter on Shabbos or not. And that's basically the summary of today's old daf. We're going to stop over here. We started off answering our original question from yesterday. Ibaylu ma'u livel b'tchilu b'Shabbos dam mifkad pakid dam chabure michbar. We answered it's machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Rav said it's mutter. Shmuel said it's also. We're going with that lashon. We had a few questions on Rav, and then we had a few questions on Shmuel. The questions on Rav we answered. We had one question on Shmuel that we couldn't answer. So we came along and Rava taught us it's a machlokes Tanaim. Abaye defended that it's not a machlokes Tanaim. And that is how we're concluding over here that Abaye, the way that Abaye defends it in general is because Abaye says, the way that Rava defends it, because Abaye was bothered. What happened to Psik Reisha? The reason is because this concept of Ataya, that you could have an act of penetration, act of tashmish without removing the Besulim. And we'll pick it up tomorrow, in which we're going to have more questions on the sheet of Shmuel that says it's Aser. We'll pick it up from there in the next year.